Hey guys, what's going on? ZeroArmada here with some Blacklight Retribution gameplay and commentary, playing the map Safehold, TDM, doing Blacklight Arms Dealer Episode 2, going over a combat rifle build. This build in particular was suggested by Ethan, and he has a high damage combat rifle. So we're going to do this video a little bit differently. Basically, the first build that I showed was the build that was suggested. The second one was my recommended build, and then for gameplay, pretty much I just went and used the recommended build as the gameplay. So I'm just trying to experiment with a couple of things. Let me know what you guys think is a little bit more helpful. Should I do gameplay with the suggested build? Should I do gameplay with my recommended build, or should I do something else? But his suggested build was a ArmCom Copperhead muzzle, the Krane GX3 Heavy, the Krane EX9 Holo scope, extended magazine, and the Redsand S14 stabilized stock. And then kind of what I saw and what I wanted to change on this build. First off, I think 90 damage is a little bit excessive for a combat rifle. A couple of reasons for this. First off, simple math. 90 damage times 3, 9, 18, 27, 270 damage. So you can effectively 3-shot anyone with a 90 damage bolt action rifle. You really want around 83 to 84 damage. That'll guarantee you a 3-shot kill. 84 will obviously be 8, 16, 24 times 12, or times 4 times 3 is 12. So you have about 252 damage with an 84 damage bolt action rifle with 3 shots. So that'll pretty much guarantee you a 3-shot kill. Of course, headshots, speed builds, lower health builds can account for 2-shot kills, and so on and so forth. But ultimately with a combat rifle, you're playing a little bit more methodical, playing a little bit more slower paced, kind of evaluating the field a little bit slower than with kind of an automatic weapon in most aspects. So you're going to play the game slowly. You're going to really assess how you're going to fire your weapon, and most of your shots are going to be timed. So I think just having that reliability of a 3-shot kill, and kind of coupling that with that fact, and lowering the damage, and then going with a little bit less recoil. I think recoil is kind of the more impactful stat among combat rifles. That's usually what people like to minimize on most combat rifles. So I still kept it pretty high damage, 88 damage, but even with that 2 damage and reduction, the reduction in recoil and spread overall is really worthwhile, just to kind of forego some damage and kind of go in that route. Like I said, as long as you're above 80, like around 84, 83-ish, you're probably in good territory for a combat rifle. But kind of conforming to the high damage combat rifle, pretty much we went with the Copperhead muzzle still. We went with the Rhino barrel for the reduction in hip spread and spread move. Spread move is probably the more impactful stat. People don't really hip fire with combat rifles. In most situations, you really shouldn't be hip firing at all. You should really learn to keep your distance with a combat rifle in most cases. But that spread move stat's really useful in most cases. So that's kind of what we're prioritizing there. And then we went with the AC-10 Sharp, of course, because it's a really, really, really good stock for recoil reduction. And kind of coupling that with the spread reduction off of the Briar Rhino, you kind of offset the major spread reduction, or spread penalty, excuse me, from the AC-10 Sharp, if that makes sense. So at its core, it's pretty much taking Ethan's build and getting a little bit less recoil on the weapon, just to make it a little bit more manageable. For the scope, I prefer the Frontier X-Lite 257. I'm not really a fan of the Holo scope, the red Holo scope on a combat rifle, or for any long-range weapon for that matter. I think you'll see that you're going to have a lot more easier time landing shots more consistently if you have a long-range scope for a combat rifle and for a bolt-action rifle. And some of the possible scopes I would recommend for especially a combat rifle are the EMI Rifle 2, the X-Lite 257 like I talked about, and then the sniper scope, the ArmCom ESK VL Sniper. And really kind of my problem with the close quarter combat scopes is, like I said, you shouldn't really be using a combat rifle and a sniper rifle or bolt action rifle in close quarter situations to begin with. You want to keep your distance, and you're going to see that it's going to be a little bit harder to land those precise shots with a CQC scope from long distances. Granted, with like an automatic weapon, like an assault rifle or a BPFA or an M4X, you can kind of get away with a close quarter combat scope because you don't have to be as accurate to make sure your shots connect, because of course you have a large volume of bullets heading in the enemy's direction. But with a bolt action, with a combat rifle, you want that extra zoom to kind of afford yourself the opportunity to have the best chances possible to make sure your shots connect, because of course you have a limited magazine and you have limited shots and you have to be accurate. So that's kind of my take on Ethan's build. What I would change: lower the damage a little bit to prioritize recoil, because that's the major stat that's kind of the glaring problem with the combat rifle. But if you have any questions or comments about this build, or if you want to comment and give feedback about kind of this take on the Blacklight Arms dealer video series, just leave a comment down below. And thank you for watching as always, guys. Much appreciated.
Two minutes till it's built. Sign you.